there was no one in my life that told me the things I'm about to tell you now. And they're very, very important. So please listen. It has to do with diet and the questions that I get all the time about the diet that I am on, the diets I have been on, and the things that I have done with food and what I am doing with food now. There is a really, really important point that nobody made clear to me, that nobody ever talked about, that I wish that I had known at the time. First of all, I'd never seen anybody in the condition that I was in get better. I had seen a couple accounts on Instagram as I was very, very late into my 14 years of severe illness that I was able to look at and say, like, okay, they're doing something. They're doing something that's getting them better. But it was at the very end, and I didn't have anybody for years to look at and say, like, wow, they did it. Like, how did they do it? And then, to like go from there. So the most important thing, I will talk about what I have done and what I am doing now diet wise. But the most important thing that I want to get across is that unless you were born with severe food allergies, or had them at a very, very young age, like as a toddler or even, as a kid under 10, most people that have Lyme disease got it when they were a little bit older, at least preteens and into their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. Therefore, it took the body a long time to get to that point of being ill. It was years and years of environmental toxins, of toxins in our food, all the different chemicals that we are eating, all the different preservatives, all the different additives, natural flavorings, everything, the sugars, absolutely everything that's in our diet as a Western culture that took us so long to get sick. And it happened so slowly. I mean, even just if you think about the amounts of sugars that were poured into cereal in the 80s and 90s that kids were just eating every single day, those sugars were massively imbalancing the systems. And our parents had no idea. We knew sugar wasn't good for us, but we had no idea that our daily breakfast foods were causing major imbalances, let alone all the other things that were going on and all the products we were putting in our body that were contributing to the hormonal imbalances and the digestive problems. Yes, the stuff you put on your body topically can contribute to your digestive problems. And things that you inhale can contribute to your digestive problems. So it took years, if not decades, for your body to get to a level where it started going like, wait a minute, nope, we're not doing that food anymore. That food is going to cause a major problem. So this is where I was getting very, very frustrated, is that I am watching as food by food by food is getting taken off of my list of safe foods, of foods that I can digest, of foods that my body is actually able to use for nourishment and wasn't causing a problem. And my mental state was going down and down and down as I'm looking at this list of foods dwindle. And very, very quickly, as I got sicker and sicker, it was like rapidly I was losing foods. So keep in mind that where you're at now is not where you're always going to be. And it's going to take some time to get your body back to that balance. It took a long time. It took years and years and years, if not decades again, of your body to get to this point of extreme imbalance where it's not tolerating foods. It's going to take a while to get back, and it might not take as long. I am an example of that. Once I figured out the things that were really working for me, I was able to say, okay, I know that this, and this isn't working. I know what I have to do in all the other arenas of my life to bring my health back up. So I want to talk about a little bit of how my progression of diet kind of went, and how I started eliminating things from my diet and why, and where I was able to start building them back into my diet. So I noticed the first thing was that I was having problems with histamines in foods, and I was having leaky gut issues that were It's all a histamine problem. So your intestines have little tiny holes in them, and those little tiny holes take in just the size of food molecule particles that they're supposed to and able to nourish your tissues. When you have leaky gut, those holes get slightly bigger, and slightly bigger pieces of food can now fit through those holes. And those bigger pieces of food are too big for your tissues to take in as nourishment. So your white blood cells come in and go like, hey, wait a minute, this is like a foreign thing. What is this doing? And it starts eating it and attacking it. That's what your white blood cells do, is they essentially like eat it, cover it, and then it sends out signals to all the other white blood cells in the area that this food is a danger. Hold on, we need to look out for this food. Anytime this food comes into our system now, this is not good. We're going to eat it. We're going to cover it so that it doesn't harm us. But when it's doing that, it's releasing tons and tons of histamine into the system. So now your body is having this massive inflammatory response to a food that is supposed to be safe because it's too big for your body to do something with it. And that was how I started having major problems. And my main food, the first thing that I really had problems with was tomatoes, because I ate lots of pasta sauce, I ate lots of ketchup, I would eat raw tomatoes. I just loved tomatoes. Apples was another one of the first ones. I just loved apples. I would eat 1 or 2 and sometimes 3 apples a day. And I started massively having reactions to apples where I would break out instantly in rashes from them. And then it started being all raw foods. So raw foods are high in histamine. And so it's like really contributing to a leaky gut situation when these big particles of food are getting through. They're already containing histamine. So your body is reacting to the histamine within the food along with this white blood cell attack action that's going on here. And so you have this massive histamine response in the body, and it can create anaphylactic shocks out of nowhere when you've never had them before. You suddenly go like, I've been eating this food all my life. What happened? Or I get mild rashes to this, or mild inflammation or something, or some itchiness in my throat, but suddenly I had an anaphylactic shock to this. That's really, really, really common with people with leaky gut when it gets to this extreme level of the whole body system just going down and weakening. So hit the low histamine foods unconsciously. I wasn't aware of a low histamine diet at this time. I just knew which foods were causing me to itch and rash and break out in all these lovely ways and cause digestive pain, because that can happen too with the histamine. It just can cause gas and bloating and all that kind of good stuff. So I started playing around with different things and learning about like dairy, being a big histamine thing. And then I started learning about like specifically what types of histamine foods were high in histamine and cutting them out. So I had many different doctors. I started saying like FODMAP diet, like all these different things, all these different types of diets that were starting to become known. And this was like 10 years ago now. They were just kind of starting to become vocabulary that people that were having chronic illnesses were starting to use, and doctors were starting to prescribe to patients to try. There wasn't, there was the Atkins diet, which I never did that. And there was, like the fad diets that would come in and go. And a lot of people would suggest to me, like more people that were just in my life, not necessarily doctors, but sometimes naturopaths or doctors would suggest like, hey, have you heard of this diet? Why don't you try this? And I never really did that. I was always more of an intuitive, like this is what my body needs and not needs. And then like starting to let go of the addictions to different foods. Like for instance, with dairy, I was a high dairy eater. I loved ice cream and I loved milk. And very, very early on, probably just like 3 or 4 years into my illness, in my early 20s, I started to realize that dairy was just not it, sis. So I took that out, and that made a big improvement, just taking that out. And then my biggest thing, before I even heard the word keto or had any idea what any of that was this was about 5 or 6 years ago, I started eating just massive amounts of meat because all of the foods that I was eating were causing problems. Everything. So it didn't matter what I ate, I was having a reaction to it. At this point in time, 5 or 6 years ago, I was having to do water fasts about for at least half a day every couple days or so, because my histamine levels and inflammation levels in the body were so high that I couldn't tolerate eating anything. That I just had to put water into my system for at least a few hours in the morning and not eat anything to like allow my system to come down in inflammation enough that I could start to eat something. And what I ended up eating at this point, and also candida was a huge issue for me. So I was on all different kinds of things about learning about candida and what could kill candida and trying all these things and everything, and foods that could help kill it, like garlic and ginger and onions and throwing in all that kind of stuff a lot. And I cut out every single carb that was available. This did not just include beans or include bread, and like typical carbs and stuff like that. I cut out every single carb. I did not eat bread. I did not eat cookies. I did not eat cake. I did not eat any kind of flour whatsoever. I did not eat any beans. I did not eat any root vegetables. And I did not eat anything with sugar. And I did not eat any fruits. There no nuts. There was absolutely zero like complex or simplex carbs in my diet. The only thing I was getting, whatever kind of small amounts of carbs that would be in something, um, was in the meat I was eating because of the diet that the animal that I was eating had. Or I don't even know if I don't think leafy greens have any carbs in it. Or cruciferous maybe has a very small amount of simple carbs in it. It was just cruciferous vegetables was what I was eating, and cooked leafy greens. So that being cabbage, cauliflower, bok choy, broccoli, asparagus, and Brussels sprouts. And I cut out Brussels sprouts for a couple years because Brussels sprouts are super prone to mold, and they hide in all those little leaves in there. And so I absolutely cut out Brussels sprouts for a couple years as well. So I was eating cabbage and broccoli and cauliflower. I even cut out for a short time because cauliflower is also prone to mold. You can see it as it starts to grow on there and starts to get a little bit brown and black in certain areas. So I even cut that out for a while. So I had asparagus, broccoli, and cabbage and bok choy. Those were the vegetables I was eating, and meat. And I was eating red meat, turkey, chicken. I did not eat pork. So those were the things I was eating. So when I say my list of foods was down to 10 foods, it was actually down to like 10 foods with the oils that I was eating, if you count those as foods. So I was eating food types. So I was having walnut oil was one of my favorites because it had some sweetness to it and it gave the food like a rich flavor. I was eating olive oil, avocado oil, sesame oil, which I never really liked sesame oil, but I did oil pulling with that, which is a totally different subject. So there was that 2.5 years where that's all I ate. That was it. That was it. I had my body weight was, I was eating 1.5 to 3 pounds of meat a day. And that was where I was getting all it. So it was almost on like a carnivore diet minus the other animal products. It was just the meat. So when people talk about keto diets, like again, at this time, I had no idea what a keto diet was. I'd never heard that word or anything. I just slowly started cutting everything out until I got to that point where that's all I was eating. And it was intense. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was like, actually, and what I'm learning in Ayurveda is that eating bitter foods actually causes like sadness and grief and sorrow to come in. Like, 'cause you need those other foods in order to create that harmony in your body. You need that literal sweetness in your life. You need that spice in your life. And spice was an absolute no. Sugar, I mean, the spice would just cause like flares, rashes immediately. Anything hot, even pepper for a while I stopped putting in, and I even cut out the garlic that I was adding to my food. I was adding onions and garlic. Those were the other things that were in my diet at that time. That's right. So it was the cruciferous, the garlic and onions, the oil, and the meat. That was my diet. That's right. There was no rice, there was no noodles, there's nothing. It was just that. And if I had even a bite of birthday cake, so cake on my birthday was my one thing that I would allow. It was dairy free, it was gluten free, and it was sugar free. That was my birthday cake for a few years. My mom would make this German chocolate cake. She still makes it, but now she adds some maple syrup or even rum to it now to sweeten it. And I would have a reaction. I would have a reaction to the chocolate because the chocolate was causing inflammation. And I would have a reaction to the carbs. I would have candida flares. My skin would start to break out in the candida rashes. I would have the candida acne, which is like little white, tiny little pimples that come on the face, or you can get them on your chest, or if you get acne there as well. I would get them usually right around my mouth here. This is like a common area for candida pimples to be. From one, I should say not one bite, but one like small slice of cake could do that to me for a couple years. That was where I was at. So how did I start lifting myself out of this crazy, insane, essentially elimination diet that I never intentionally was on any diet? I literally just like went with what my body was absolutely telling me it needed to do, and I had no other choice. So I ended up doing the DRNS, the dynamic neuroretraining system, which was the brain training, which helped with the multiple chemical sensitivities. It helped with the leaky gut. It helped with using my mind power over the body power. I added in the breath work, which helped to alkalize the body to calm down the inflammation. The cold therapy also did that. The stem cells, well, they temporarily for 16 months caused a massive histamine reaction, the worst that it had ever been. Even after I had previous to that done the dynamic neuroretraining system, had the stem cells, and then continued the dynamic neuroretraining system, but the space in between here afterwards was ridiculous. I was responding to everything. So I felt like all the work that I did before the stem cells, which I was starting to be able to tolerate perfume and add in a couple foods, it just reverted back. And so it was really hard for me for a while there. But it started to, build and continue. And the stem cells created a huge inflammation in the body. So I was having to calm that down again. So as I started coming out of that neuro repair, that inflammation stage after the stem cells, I was able to start adding in some more foods. And then it was in the beginning of 2020. This is how short of a time I've gone from eating like nothing for years, and then starting out a little bit in, and then big, huge inflammation from the stem cells, and then starting to be able to add things in again, really for the first time since about October of 2019 was kind of when I first started coming out of that neuro repair stage from the stem cells. And then it was really in 2020 that I was doing the breath work and cold therapy every single day, that I was able to, in combination with the stem cells, in combination with my naturopath, in combination with doing NAET therapy, look that up. That was absolutely huge into adding foods back into my diet and being able to digest and take in that nourishment that I needed into my actual cells. I wasn't just putting food into my body and it was going through. In combination with all that, in 2020, I was able to add things in. Now, within a few months, I was able to add in raw foods. I was able to add in fruits and vegetables that I hadn't been able to eat in years. Tomatoes. I started adding in tomatoes and spice, peppers, um, all that hot quality food that I absolutely couldn't eat. I was eating rice. I was eating gluten-free pasta. I was eating, I could eat a piece of cake. I could eat a piece of cake a couple days a week and not have a problem. It was like drastic shift suddenly, from diligently doing all these things within the span of time, from right before the stem cells, from about a year and a half before the stem cells until 2020 began, and continuing still in through that. But that was when the huge shift happened for me and my body, my mind, body, spirit, entirely as one during that chunk of time. So I've had gluten a couple times, just a small amount, but I ordered a regular gluten sandwich and I ate that, and I had like mild cramping and stuff like that, but it was very, very, very mild. I have had some alcohols like the rum in the cake that my mom made, with gluten in it. I don't get gluten-free oatmeal anymore, which oatmeal doesn't actually have gluten in it, but it's processed on machinery with gluten. But I was so sensitive at a time that I would have a reaction to that oatmeal that was processed on the equipment with the wheat. And I have not added dairy back in. Dairy is something that I'm going to wait a while to add back in. It's not necessary to do that right now. And my body is able to put in so much now that I want to add in, that it takes like days, if not weeks, for it to come out of balance from too much of something. Whereas before, it would be that one piece of cake or that one plate of pasta that I would try to eat, of rice noodles. It was, such a small thing that would be weeks, if not months, of repercussions after that from the candida and the inflammation that would be caused from it. Now I can eat. It's mainly like being able to eat all that, being able to eat the fruits, the raw stuff. I can have oatmeal for breakfast every morning and not have a problem, like eating carbs every single day and not having an issue, not having a candida issue is crazy mind blowing to me. And I don't eat meat very often. It's, very rare, maybe once every couple months or so. If that, maybe a couple times a month, like around the holidays or something, is very small amounts. When I do eat it, my body just doesn't want it. It's not for any, and not really for an ethical reason. It's not really because I'm intentionally not trying to eat meat. It's because I've just found that my body does really well eating a really high bean diet and getting a lot of my protein from beans. Like I eat a pound to 3 pounds of cooked beans a day. So I went from eating that much meat to eating that much beans a day, and I eat massive amounts of cooked vegetables. I love rice noodles. I eat those on a normal basis. I can eat cake. I can have some cookies. I drink oat milk throughout the day. I go through like a carton of creamy oat milk, and it does have a mild amount of sugar in it, very, very low, but it does have sugar in it. I go through that every 3 or 4 days, a carton of that. I can eat so much more. I can have chocolate. I eat like 90 to 95% cocoa chocolate, so it's very, very high. I don't want the sugar. I just want the chocolate, but I could not eat chocolate for years because it caused inflammation in my system. I would have nerve pain. I would have nerve pain when I ate the carbs. I would have nerve pain when I ate any of the sugar. When I had coffee, I didn't even like coffee, but I was trying to drink it for a while because I was so tired all the time that I was seeing if I could drink coffee and it would give me some boost, but it caused like nerve pain because of the inflammation. So for me, the inflammation led to a lot of nerve pain. It didn't just lead to like GI problems, but like it actually caused like your nerves can have severe inflammation, and some people just get inflammation in more areas than others. And for me, my nervous system was super sensitive to stuff, so that's where I had that. It's crazy to think where I was and where I am now, and nobody I didn't know anybody who had been where I was at that extreme level of literally eating like 10 different food items every single day for a couple years to ever getting out of that. I didn't hear of anybody doing that. I have since heard of people who have not had that exact experience, but who have had, like for instance, a lady that had MS that was told that she was in a wheelchair, she could barely walk, and she was told she was just going to get worse and worse and worse. And I believe she was in her like late 20s, early 30s when a doctor told her that like you're just eventually going to die, like you're going to not be, you're absolutely not going to be able to walk at all, and you're going to lose everything. And she said, no, I'm not. And she did things like I did, and she found things that worked for her, and she was absolutely determined to change everything. And you know what, she has 0 MS symptoms today. Just know that it's possible. It takes work, it takes determination, it takes going outside of the box, it takes other people looking at you and saying like you're crazy for doing all these things, that why would you get in the pool every day? Why would you do that? It's freezing outside. You know, like there's, why are you eating this diet? Why would you do that to yourself? And that's not what it's about. It's about knowing that that's going to heal you. It's about knowing what you need to do for yourself to heal yourself. And that is what I am finding is the most important. You know what? I don't care if I'm going to go dance in a park in front of a bunch of people. That video I put on Instagram about that. Just moving, free movement, and, you know, people walking by all over the place. And like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the anxiety I had about stuff that mattered before, that I thought mattered before, just doesn't matter anymore. And I'm just me, and I'm gonna do what I know I need to do to get better. And I know that you can find that for yourself too. This was a very long video. I hope that this helped you in some way. Please share this with somebody if you think it's going to help them, because sometimes we just need somebody to be that push to send us something that can really help us. And maybe they will watch it, maybe they won't, but you know what? At least you gave it a shot. This is like, this is really a lot for me. This is like so much passion that I have for this, and so many emotions that are around this that I've holding. Like I can feel it. I'm even like kind of sweaty because I am just, it's so much that's coming up with all this. It's a lot to go through, and it's a lot to tolerate, and it's a lot to have people put their feelings and emotions on, and make you feel bad about it, or like you're not doing enough, or you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or whatever it is, you're doing what you need to do. Okay. All right, well, I will see you guys in the next video. All right, bye.